Welcome to Jikoni Magic's Meza. Today we're going to be baking an eggless red velvet cake in a Sufuria. It's super moist and soft, and I'm sure that you'll really enjoy it. Please remember to ring the notification bell immediately you subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my videos. Before proceeding to our red velvet cake, I would like to inform you that a couple of weeks ago, I was a guest on the Pika na Power show that airs on Sundays on Citizen TV. We made githeri in 3 different ways. Talk about githeri with a twist. We even made githeri sandwich. Please follow the link in the info bar above to catch the full episode. And now let's get to baking. The first thing that you'll do is to prepare your sufuria for baking. Look for a sufuria that's deep enough to accommodate your baking tin. Next, take a cup of normal iodized cooking salt, or you could also use sand if that's what you prefer. Pour it into your sufuria and level it out. Next, take an old sufuria lid, metal plate, or perhaps a wire rack and place it on top of the salt. Now cover the sufuria with a tight-fitting lid to create that oven-like effect. Finally, place it on your cooker on high heat for 10 to 15 minutes. Meanwhile, let us work on our cake as the sufuria oven heats up. Here I've already measured out 2.5 tablespoons of cornstarch or corn flour. I normally do this when I need to make cake flour. The cornstarch breaks down the gluten strength in the all-purpose flour, resulting in a tender and delicate structure. So start by adding cornstarch to the measuring cup and then topping it up with the all-purpose flour. I also prefer to scoop out the flour using a spoon and adding it to the cup, then leveling it out as opposed to scooping it out directly using the cup. I ended up sieving the flour into a larger bowl. I have no idea why I thought that it would all fit in that tiny bowl. I also added 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder. Here I have a half teaspoon baking soda, a 1/4 teaspoon salt, and 1.5 teaspoons baking powder. I first added the salt and the baking powder into the flour, while the baking soda was for much later, as you'll see. Next, I sieve everything together for better aeration and also to break down the big lumps of cocoa powder. Here I have a 1/4 cup of unsalted butter at room temperature. Followed by 1 cup of powdered sugar. Then I creamed everything together until it all turned pale and fluffy. I later added another half cup of sugar while off camera as I was creaming the mixture together because I felt that 1 cup wasn't enough. I also added a 1/4 cup of sunflower oil. Here you can use any neutral flavored oil of your choice if you don't have sunflower available. The oil helps in loosening up the butter and sugar, making it easier to incorporate the next ingredient, which was milk powder. This is half a cup of full cream milk powder, and I sieved it to break down the big lumps. Next, I added 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, then a few tablespoons of milk to loosen the mixture. In total, I had 3/4 cups of milk, but I did not add all of it at once. Now that the mixture was loose enough to my liking, I added 1 teaspoon of red food coloring. Also made sure that I removed my white spatula because I did not want to stain it, and used a wire whisk. Add enough to bring the desired color intensity, but please just use your judgment because too much of it can affect the final taste. Once all the color was incorporated, I added the flour mixture in 3 portions. As for the milk, I started by adding just a few tablespoons because I needed to gauge if the red color was up to my liking. I totally liked the color, so I proceeded to add the rest of the flour and milk. This was the consistency of the batter after everything was mixed in, but I felt like it was too heavy, so I added a quarter cup of milk to lighten it up. This was the consistency I was aiming for, flowing easily but not too light to the point of being runny. Here I have 1 tablespoon of white vinegar, which I mixed with half a teaspoon of baking soda. The reason I'm doing this is because vinegar provides an acidic medium which ensures that the baking soda works to the best of its abilities. One thing that you need to bear in mind is that your oven and cake tins have to be ready so that you bake the cake immediately, because the baking soda will lose its potency very fast. I used a 7-inch baking tin and it was also spring foam. I had already prepared it by applying butter, dusting it lightly with flour and lining the bottom with parchment paper. My Sufuria oven was ready by now. It had already heated up to 200 degrees centigrade, as can be seen on the oven thermometer. But a thermometer is not absolutely necessary. If the Sufuria heats up for a minimum of 10 minutes, it should be good to go. So I placed my cake in the Sufuria immediately, and by then the temperature had dropped and should be ranging between 175 to 180 degrees centigrade. Cover, reduce the heat to medium-low and bake for 30 minutes. Here we are after 30 minutes, and you can see a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean. As the cake was cooling, I worked on the frosting. And for that, I mixed 200 grams of white compound chocolate with 200 ml of heavy cream in a jug and melted them in the microwave. I started by microwaving for 30 seconds, stirring the mixture to assess it, and as you can see, there are quite a number of white chocolate lumps still remaining. So I microwaved the mixture again for a further 30 seconds, and this time everything melted fully from the residual heat after thoroughly mixing it. This is how thick the mixture was. Notice how it coats the back of the spoon. I covered with plastic paper and refrigerated it overnight until it completely firmed up. This was the following day. See how firm it looked? So I whipped it up for about 2 minutes until it just became stiff. Be careful, because if you whisk it for too long, it will go from smooth to extra lumpy in an instant. This is how it's supposed to look: stiff and not falling off the spoon unless you shake it really hard. Next, I prepped my cake for frosting by leveling off the top. I kept the shaved off bits for decorating my cake later. Next, I divided it into 2 layers. Please note how soft and moist it looks. Next, I used freshly squeezed orange juice to moisten it further. You can also use simple sugar syrup for this purpose, so moisten the cake, paying special attention to the edges. Next, add a layer of the frosting and spread it out to cover the bottom layer. Then place the second layer on top of it and repeat the process. Cover the rest of the cake and then keep the cake in the fridge for the crumb coating to set. This is the amount of frosting that had remained after applying the crumb coating, and as you can see, there is no way it was going to be enough. So I mixed it with some leftover cream cheese frosting that I had used on my carrot cake. This frosting had cream cheese, whipped cream and melted white chocolate in it. Yum! The frosting ended up being slightly loose, but I was okay with that. So next I spread the frosting over the cake, and my intention here was to ensure that I covered the cake all over. Notice how I kept cleaning up the excess frosting from the spatula and reapplying it. I didn't have the luxury of having lots of frosting to play around with. I kept my finishing very simple. I did not smoothen out the frosting because it wasn't going to be seen anyway. Next I applied the crumbs from the shavings that I took off from the top of the cake. I pulled off the plastic paper from the bottom of the cake because I wanted to have the crumbs lining the bottom circumference of the cake to fall on the plate itself. I also piped a few details on top of the cake. I started by piping out just a bit of the frosting, and from there I went over them several times to add to their height. Lastly, I added some grated white chocolate on top of the cake and I was done. And yes, I know the cake could really have benefited from better decorating technique, but that was more than compensated for by the luscious awesomeness of the cake. Check out this slice, the color, the moistness, and not forgetting the taste. The frosting was just how I love it. Not too sweet. Cloyingly sweet frostings are not my thing. Until next time, God willing, let's meet here again for more recipes. This has been yours truly, Jikoni Magic. Kwaheri ya kuonana.